And then if I share it with you, okay, so new stream. Something happened. My camera just wonked out. I think maybe the connection was bumped, like the connector into the computer, and that messed things up. I'm not really sure, but I like to see all 16, 17 of you joining into that. That number should be 16, 17. You are expected to participate in this lesson. If you are one of my students, if you are a public person who have stumbled upon this thing, welcome to a Create with Kiely art tutorial video. Oh my gosh, I can't hit that. All right, so we are going to be drawing a utensil today, a spoon or a fork. I've chosen a spoon because I already have a tutorial video in my channel with me drawing a fork. So I thought I would, change things up and go for a spoon since I haven't done that yet. It's totally up to you what you want to draw. Both utensils have their own sets of challenges. So the first one, the most obvious one, being that this is made of reflective metal. You move it around in the light and you can see that there's some really, really bright highlights, and yet there are very, very dark marks as well. And that being able to get that kind of reflective metal texture is a great skill to have as an artist. I mean, you think of armor, you think of any types of materials that have some sort of reflection to it. Being able to see and capture that in your art is awesome to be able to do. I still only see 7 people watching this stream. You are all supposed to be sitting in class watching this.
Miss, it's because you're echoing on the video.
Okay. How's that now? There, I've muted my Teams meeting thing. Can you guys hear me in the, there's 8. Did I solve the problem? Can someone with a microphone tell me?
Yeah.
Someone with a microphone. Thank you. All right. So we've got the reflective metal. That's a much better number. Thank you, kids. And we're able to capture all these different shades of gray with our graphite pencils. We just need the bravery. We have the ability. We just need the bravery to get all these very drastic, different shades of gray on the gray scale. So grab a light source. I have a light source coming at this from one side, and I'm going to plop my spoon down on the adjacent page of my sketchbook, and I'm going to do the drawing down here, okay? So you set up your still life as you think works best for your environment, for your space. And I'm going to do the same and get my camera set up so that you guys can see and benefit from it as much as you can. There it is. Okay. There, look at that. That's nice. That's a nice thing. Oh my gosh. I want this up out of the way. Sorry, guys. I'm fussing with cords and probably making you a little seasick in the... Okay. So let's choose a light pencil, one that doesn't make very dark marks, because we are starting off with the sketch. The sketch is to lay down a good composition so that it's balanced and optimally using the space of the page. Now we've got a long object compared to a tall object, right? So we all have our sketchbooks in the landscape position. That's the first decision we need to make before we even make a mark. The next step we make is where are we going to put our object on the page and how big is it going to be? So let's put down our cardinal points, or north, south, east, and west. And I think east and west are the most important. So where is the tip of your object going to end and where is it going to begin? Okay, so height's not going to be too much of an issue here with this one. So really I'm going to worry about my start and my finish marks. That way I'm using the page as much as I possibly can. I understand that we're going to have some emptiness up here and here. No worries about that. So essentially, we're looking next, now that we have the length and our composition kind of figured out, plotted down, we're going to look at the basic geometric shapes and lines that this object is creating. So I'm going to start off with a line. This is kind of the middle of where this thing is. And then it's easier with forks, but we can also do it with spoons. I want you to imagine a square, okay? A square, and where is it fitting in the perspective kind of sense of this? So I'm feeling like there's a vanishing point up here and that it's getting smaller as it moves away from me. So I'm doing the basic geometric shapes that I see here. And my mark making is really, really light. Some of you, I've noticed that you're pushing too hard at this stage right here. And then later on, when you go to erase it, you can still see the marks and it doesn't make a crispy, clean drawing, right? So keep it light, hold your pencil at the other end. Go over it a few times. If you've got an ellipse because you've chosen a spoon to draw, awesome. Remember, with ellipses and circles and all those cheeky shapes that are kind of difficult to get on your first go, just go over it a few times. I know somewhere in this ragtag rat's nest of lines, somewhere in there is my answer. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not stressing that I didn't get it right the first time and cry and give up. No. I'm going to do better. Keep going till I get it right. So boom, boom, boom. Now, mind the proportions. Here's how big I made the part of the utensil, the part of the spoon that goes into the mouth. Be mindful of this proportion, whether it's a fork or spoon, to the handle. So if I kind of eyeball it and like imagine I'm squinting one eye and I'm holding these fingers up and I'm showing I've got one finger at the tip and one finger at the base. So it's like this, but I'm pointing it at the real life thing. And I'm going to count how many times can I fit this in the handle. And it's like 1.5. So it may be different for you. I've chosen a big like soup spoon. You may have chosen a smaller dinner or dessert fork or a teaspoon. So your proportions may be a little bit different, and that's awesome. Just be mindful of them, observe them. So I want to make sure that the handle fits proportionally with the head of the spoon. Is that what we're going to call it? I don't know. The head and the handle. Bing. Time to silence my phone. People like to text me all day long. It's so popular. Not really. I'm joking. Okay. Anyone who manages to keep a lively social life in these times right now, good for you. What social life? Who had one to begin with? Not I. Okay, so somewhere in here is my spoon. I might want to look at the negative space that's being created in here. Let's look at that a little bit more closely. I think it's a smidgen hairy. All right. A little bit more firmer. I'm looking at the negative space to help me get the correct proportions of the spoon. I'm looking at the distance between the top edge of the spoon and the bottom edge. I'm capturing that. I am watching how gradually the gradation of the distance between these lines changes because my spoon, it's thinner here. And then gradually it gets thicker. And I'm looking at the direction that the spoon makes. Like it's not as curved as I've got here. So I got to fix that. It's a little straighter. So I'm observing, I'm drawing carefully. There we go. And here's a big trick that some kids overlook. Yeah, my spoon is a thin line of metal. I see that. But there's still some 2D. There's still an edge that I'm seeing here. So we've got the flat surface of the object, but we need to draw its side. You all can see its side, right? So let's double this line. It stays pretty consistent, the width between these two lines, but it's definitely doubled. So let's, again, keep your marks light. You're going to be erasing a lot of this hairiness later. And then over on this side, I see the doubling as well. So it's a double-edged sword. I think I've always drawn the fork. So my artists who have chosen to draw a fork today, you're going to be running into the challenge of the prongs. Now, look at them. If you're drawing the prongs, and I'm just making this up. I don't have a visual reference in front of me, but I have drawn forks several times. So I kind of have an idea. The more you practice, you should always draw from life because it helps you get better to doodle these things. Okay, so you've drawn your fork. You've drawn some kind of a squarish thing, okay, that goes across the top. Ours is just rounded. And then look at the top edge and kind of give yourself points to divide up the prongs. And then give yourself points here to divide up the spaces at the bottoms of the prongs. And notice what direction, if you lined up those things, what direction, and even while you're at this stage right now, draw those kind of guidelines so that they follow the right vanishing point, so that you know that if we drew a line and it went off into the distance and met at a vanishing point, these two lines would eventually meet. Same thing for here. If we had a line, if this was a squared based thingamajiggy spoon handle, there would be some kind of depth and perspective being created here. Once you've figured out where the tips are and where the bottoms are, then go in and do your ups and downs, your lines that go in and out to draw the prongs. Woo! Look at those shakes. I need to hold the pencil a little bit more firmly. The caffeine shakes are showing today. I should have stopped at 2. Whatever. All right. Something. It's a little messy right now. So with the spoon people, we added the edge to the spoon. You fork people have to do the same thing with each prong. Don't leave me just a whole bunch of U's. There has to be some thickness. You can see the edge. And you need to draw that in. Double up the one line. Okay? All right. So carrying on. You guys are working at your own pace, but I'm just going to go at mine. You can rewatch this anytime you like. I want to figure out, because I made such a big rat's nest, I'm going to clean this up a little bit right now. Kind of commit to a set of lines that are somewhere in here. So just tidy it up a smidgen, because I don't want to get confused and use the wrong line when I start shading. So there we go. Love these malleable erasers. Make sure you're still looking at your object. Make sure you're checking to be sure that you're picking the right lines to erase and the right lines to keep. There we go. All right. Boom. All right. Now, finish marking some of your shoe drawings. And I noticed that some of you forgot a very, very important part in the creation of the illusion of 3D form. And that's the cast shadow. Super important because it gives the viewer so much information about what the heck they're looking at and what's it doing in real life or in this imaginary illusion of real life. So let's observe the shadow. And this is another reason why I assign utensils, because they do this fun little touch the table, lift off the table, touch the table, lift off the table, and the shadow's doing a whole bunch of fun, interesting things. So before you even put that pencil down, look at the shadow. Notice that where it's closer, where the spoon or fork is closer and actually physically making contact with the table, notice that the shadow gets extremely dark. But then as it moves away from the table, lifts off the table, notice that the shadow gets lighter. So all of you who have been doing like these hardcore solid black shapes, not shadows, but shapes, we need to get out of that. This is forcing you out of that little habit. So just like we did with the spoon, we're going to draw lightly. Oh, so lightly. Super light. The outlines of this shadow. And I'm looking at the negative space that's being created with with this handle and the shadow on the paper. And I'm just comparing and contrasting all the time. What's going on? What do I see? Is it bigger, smaller, shorter, taller? Always asking myself questions. And then when I do that, it even points out some mistakes I might have made elsewhere. Here, that feels better. And then my shadow comes out a little. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom. Now we go to the other side. Now this shadow's changing. I'm aware, but I'm just getting the proportion of the shadow correct. So don't worry about that right now. Don't worry about the grayscale. Just worry about proportion, putting it down. Now, if you've got 52 shadows coming off your object because you've got 52 light sources in the space that you're drawing right now, choose the best ones. I've got a couple here. I'm gonna incorporate those, or at least give myself guidelines as to where those shadows are gonna fade. Okay? All right. Fork people, you have to do the different prongs and the shadows that they cast, okay? This guy, you're going to see the shadows, and you might even see them between the prongs, okay? It's not harder than the spoon. It's different. It's a different challenge because we now, the spoon people, need to look at the concavities that the spoon is made of. Okay, so I just made that word up. I don't know if it's real. But see how the spoon is like a little bowl and it goes down, goes in. So we need to look at what's happening with the reflections on that spoon and try to get that curvature, how it's warping what it's reflecting. So this is where it gets challenging with the spoon. So all you fork people who are like, why did I choose a fork? No, we got this weird light bending stuff happening over here. So don't worry. Everyone is being challenged, but everyone, it's just like life, right? We all have our own different kind of challenges. And then I also want you to block out and mark out the whitest points, the brightest, whitest spots on your utensils. Where are they? Give yourself little marks so that when you're shading, you're like, oh, I don't want any pencil to go on this because I want to keep it crispy, clean, and white. The white of the page. Everything else is going to get a shade of gray on it. Some of them are a little harder, a little smaller to do. Excuse me. All right, so recap. We're using the space of the page effectively. We have just a nice amount of visual space between the edge of the book and the drawing itself. It's not too small and it's not running off the page. It's not too big. We did that by giving us starting and end points. Then we looked at the basic geometric shapes that the spoon or fork is creating. So we had a line because it's a big long thing. And then we looked at the proportion of the part that goes into your mouth versus the handle. Okay. Then we did comparisons to itself. How wide, how close together do these lines move? Where do they start? Where do they go? We looked at perspective, trying to show that it's going off into the distance. We cleaned up our messy lines because you can never get an ellipse or a circle done right the first time. The fork people were connecting the dots between the tops of their prongs and the bottoms, making sure that they're following the correct path. And then they drew the up and downy bits, okay, of each prong. Everybody should have a thickness to their utensil. It should not just be the top surface, but you should see a small little edge along the side of the spoon or fork and along the sides of the prong. Then we looked at the negative space to create accurate shadows. We outlined them very, very lightly because real life shadows do not have outlines. We're going to have to make those disappear as we go, but they cannot be forgotten because they are an important part of communicating to the viewer what this thing is doing in this little universe that I'm creating, this universe of spoon universe. Then we went in and as spoon people are kind of figuring out what are we going to do about the concavity of the spoon and blocked out the light and dark areas. Same thing for you fork people. You need to block out what's light and what's dark. Once all that's done and we're happy with the proportions and we're happy with our contour line drawing and our shadow and all that, then we can look at value and gradation. If you've already finished your drawing by now, I am sorry, sir or miss, you have not put enough time into this drawing at all yet. You have not taken the time to observe it carefully. Okay? So slow down, take a deep breath. No one wins in this game. No, there's no prize for finishing first. Okay? And if you think that video game or whatever is the prize, you're wrong. The prize is the educational experience that you guys are getting here. Okay? So don't rush it. It's got to be gradual. That's why there's 3 cups of coffee. Okay, mes amis, let's pull out a 4B, a 3B, something a little bit darker and softer, and we are going to start building up the value and gradation of our spoons. Notice where it's darkest, notice where it's lightest, and start working that in. Oh, and grab that little piece of protective paper so that you don't smudge everything as you go. All right. What happened here? Little napkin or something, just to put under the palm of your hand so it doesn't smudge things. Okay. And then go in meticulously like you're an itty bitty ant, and you are carefully shading things in, deciding what's dark, what's light, especially this concave thing. I see the tiniest little white edge between two dark areas. I'm going to try to get that. It's really thin, but that's marking the top edge of this spoon. I need to get it in there. My pencil strokes are mimicking the form of the object. Some of you just like color it in. We're not coloring in. We're sculpting in a way. We're carefully forming like Play-Doh. We're trying to make this object feel 3D. And if you go and color it in and color it in like that, like those kind of strokes, it's going to be flat. You're not going to win at 3D form challenge. What you should be doing is putting down pencil strokes that complement, that reinforce, that reinforce the feeling of roundness, of curve, of whatever. Don't go against the grain. Go with it. Build it up. Support it. Now, if you've got a whole bunch of crazy reflections happening in your spoon and you're like, can't make heads or tails, I don't know. Do the best you can. Maybe simplify a couple things, but you don't want to lose that illusion of reflectiveness. And the big trick is to have those severe contrasting values. Use my eraser as I go to get these edges crispy clean so my drawing doesn't look blurry, right? My spoon isn't blurry, the edges aren't blurred. So my drawing's edges should not be blurred either. And the first layer is just the first layer. It's never enough. You gotta build everything up Go over it a few times. Again, if you think you've finished already, minimum an hour, guys. You got to put some time into this. You have to give yourself the chance to develop your skills. If you keep drawing the same way you've been drawing since, you picked up a pencil, you're never going to improve. You'll always stay the same at this level. You want to do better, you have to want to do better. You have to try these suggestions. So this shadow right here is quite dark because the spoon is touching the table and not much light can get tucked under there. So my shadow's dark. And I like that because it makes that white edge that I was going for this whole time, makes it stand out. So if I didn't have this nice dark value beside here, I couldn't get this as feeling as light as it is. Embrace the darkness. I'm going to bring out the old blending stick. I feel like finishing this part before I move on. So I'm using tight little circles to work the graphite of the pencil into the fibers of the page. I don't want to see my pencil strokes. This is not something, nothing can be rushed in art. You can't rush a good thing. Staying mindful of the white reflective areas. I don't want to get them dark. Remember, you can adjust the pressure, how hard you push with this blending tool, and that will adjust the grayscale too, like how dark it's going to be. So you can just lightly blend, or you can push a little harder and it'll get a little bit darker as well. It's nice that you have that kind of control. And the blending tool is really good for those shadows that kind of disappear. And you just, oh, so lightly help it along. I'm going to use an eraser again to clean up stray hairy lines that I can still see. I don't want to see contour lines. Those are those lines that we first drew when we were doing these outlines of things. I don't want those to be visible because I don't see them in the real life. So let's get rid of them. They don't belong in my drawing. They don't belong in yours either. The malleable eraser is really good. You could just dab it on the page and it'll pull stuff off. If perhaps your blending tool, not stool, your blending tool went a little overboard, got a little too excited. We can bring it all back. I love these malleable erasers because they don't leave crumbs on my page. So you can almost look at the eraser as like a white pencil crayon, and you can work in the reverse of what you had there with the pencil. And you can really get it into a fine point. Bring back that sharpness. Now, I don't want you to just draw in black and white and only have like 3 values, maybe a light value, a medium value, and a dark value. There's so much more going on here. Really look, judge, decide, ask yourself, be a critical thinker. Is this the right shade of gray? Is it really light, medium, or dark? Or is it somewhere in between, you know? Okie doke. Let's move on to the next area. I'm going to grab my 4B again. All right. So I see a lot of light. So it's kind of like I finished an area. I'm going to go back, look at where it's light, look at where it's dark, get those in, block out my extra light spots so I don't get overly enthusiastic and go and shade them in accidentally. Things are a lot more linear, more line-like here, but I can still see some gradation. So don't just look carefully. Maybe there's a hint of a highlight riding along an edge. So light, and then right beside it, you might see a super black, all the way level 10 on the grayscale. Catch all those little innuendos, all those fine details. And that's what's going to make your art stand out. This part of the shadow it's pretty dark, but the sides of it tend to fade off on me as it moves away from the table. Now, don't freak out if your artistic skills are not producing the level of art that you're hoping to get at, right? If you're like, oh, looking at your artwork and then comparing it to mine or comparing it to something else on the internet, and you're like, I suck. Okay. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to give up? Or are you going to persevere? What's the difference between yours and mine? What are you doing differently from me or from that artist that you're admiring? And if you can figure out what the difference is and then try to adopt those practices, that's how you're going to improve, right? Said this before, we're all climbing the same mountain, trying to reach a ledge, which we mistake as being the top of the mountain. It's not the top, it's just a ledge. There's always someone who's going to be a little bit higher. They've been climbing longer than you. That's okay. Just don't be a defeatist. Kind of a funny word. Don't be a giver-upper. If you want something in this life, got to work for it. Nothing's easy. And if it is easy, you're not working hard enough. Work harder. It's funny, this back end of the spoon is causing me more challenge than the front end, the other end, because the details are really subtle, like what's light, what's dark, and they're very contrasting. So it's I have to like it's making my brain hurt. If you're not sure, always look at your object that you're drawing. The answer is right there in front of you. You just have to capture it. Hello, kitty. Mm-hmm. So we're getting close to 50 to 60 minutes. So 1 hour long drawing. Not done yet, but I'm just pointing it out because, it takes that long. It takes time to draw. It takes time to draw a simple spoon, right? And people think that we can produce these things real quick. And you're like, oh, no, 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 no. A little bit longer than that. And then even then, I'm going at my pace. I know there's some of you in this audience who are even slower, and that's okay. It's all right. Don't worry. Don't stress. It's all good. If you guys can just pick away at whatever details are standing out. Double check that. Does this look like metal? Ask yourself, did you capture the texture of metal when you drew this? Yes or no? If it's no, then what's missing? What do you need to include? Is it shiny whites? High value white in there? Is that what's missing? And they could be just as subtle as like this, like it's like a hair's breadth of white over here. But if I don't have it in there, it's not going to look shiny. And it has to be white, white, white. What do I have in my hand? Here we go. There. See, just that little piece, just that. That's what it took to make that feel like metal, to make it feel like it's round. It's just the tiniest little detail, but it can make a world of difference. Hey, you. Maybe something doesn't feel metallic enough because you haven't darkened it. I'm looking at this curve over here. I know that my light source is on this side and that this curve of the handle is not as well lit as this side because it bends away from the light. So I'm noticing it's like one shade darker, but if I can capture that shade, one step closer to a very realistic looking drawing. All sorts of weird grooves in here. So it's been precisely an hour. Look at that. If you're my student, which there's only 16 viewers, so I'm assuming that you're all mine. And you're done. Sign the bottom right-hand corner, like right about here-ish. Don't go way down here because we're going to crop it up a little bit. And snap a gorgeous picture of your spoon. And when I'm done here, I'm going to open up a Nearpod and we'll show and share our work, which I can't wait to see. Or if it's your work in progress, that's okay too. This is due by 3 o'clock this afternoon. So if you're still picking at it, go for it. I don't know. I can't see you guys. I miss the classroom for that. Oof. It just gets to that point where you're like, I don't have enough time to perfectionize this anymore. Love the paintbrush as a broom, little miniature broom for my book. It's good because if you use your hand and you've got all those oily, wet, natural oils happening, you smudge it all over the place, then there's sadness. There's sadness. That's me. Now I'm always like, don't use contour lines, don't have visible contour lines. And that was very true when we were drawing fruit and vegetables that legit didn't have contour lines. But there are, by the definition of line, there's lines in my spoon. Okay. So here, draw the lines that you see, right? I see them, so I can draw them. But I didn't see them when I was drawing an apple, an orange, and a pear. They did not have outlines. There was no true line. There were edges. There were edges of things. Like here I have no contour line because I don't see it. Here I have no contour line because I don't see it, but I do see a line here. I see a very distinct line. So I will draw it. I see it, I'll draw it. You don't see it, don't draw it. It's as simple as that. Okay. All right, we're gonna have to call that done. Okay. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video about drawing a spoon with graphite pencils, and click on likes to give thanks. And remember, my friends, stay awesome and be creative. Until next time.